Hey everyone, welcome to another drum tutorial. My name is Duke and today we have The Pretender by the Foo Fighters with Taylor Hawkins on drums. As always, you'll find in the description chapter markers so that you can find the exact point you're looking for. And also, as always, there's a free transcription for you at dukegrooves.com, link in the description. First take, boom, let's do it. Okay, intro. Literally 1, 2, 3, 4. So we got for the intro, we got 23 bars of the guitar and Dave Grohl singing. And then on that 24th bar, we're going to count quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the snare drum. Verse 1, more of the same for 2 bars. We've got, again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. This time accompanied by that guitar riff, the ba-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. And then we're going to develop this idea throughout the verse. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put kick drums behind the riff that's happening. Like that. So we've got 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2, 3, 4. Ba-da, ba-da-da-da, ba-da, ba-da-da-da. Going to repeat that until bar 43, well, bar 42, where we're going to bring a fill into bar 43. So we're going to go 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4. So on beat 3, we've got a flam, and on beat 4, we've got a crash in the snare drum. So from bar 41, 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4, which is going to bring us into our next little part of the verse, and we're going to go on to the hi-hat. Slightly open hi-hat, so we get kind of a wash like this. It's not all the way open as if you were opening it during a groove. We want kind of a controlled wash on this. So from that fill, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2, 3, 4. We're still using the kick drum to back up that riff, but we're taking away from the snare and bringing a backbeat in rather than every single quarter note. So we got 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2, 3, 4. When we get to bar 50, bar 49, we've got the same fill again that brought us into that last change. 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4. And that's going to bring us into a much fuller beat, more kick drums on the go. And it's going to sound like this. So that's going to be 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4. When we get to the end of verse 1, at bar 58, we're going to have a cool little fill. Going from bar 57, 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and a 3 and a 4. So we're coming into 16th notes now, and we got some double work going on the kick drum. So from the and of 2, we've got and a 3 and a 4. For those of you that struggle with speed on the kick, the idea is to get this motion, which you should be able to see up there. It's basically what's kind of known as like a toe-heel motion. You might have heard of heel-toe as well, which is the opposite. I prefer to use this one personally, only because I'm used to it. But whatever way you can get those doubles. If you have trouble with the speed of this, start it off slow like everything else and gradually work it up. And a 3 and a 4, and a 3 and a 4. So that will complete the verse, and we're on to bridge number 1. 2-bar bridge. This kicks in at 1 minute 19. We're going to go on to the ride cymbal. This changes very slightly at bridge number 2, but we'll discuss that later. It's going to go 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and a 4 again. So half-time feel to this, where the snare has moved from beats 2 to 4 to just beat 3 of the bar. We've got a crash cymbal on 1, 2 and 3 and. So kind of double spread, slower double spread between the kick and the snare. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and a 4 and a 16th single stroke rolls. I would always recommend starting these with the right if you're right-handed. If you're a left-handed drummer on left-handed kit, start with the left hand, any dominant hand. We've got a kick under beat 3. Okay. Chorus number 1. Flying through this. At 1 minute 22, we're going to hit the chorus. We're going to move into the bell on quarter notes. And we've got more of a development of the verse groove that we hit at the last part of the verse with the additional kick drums. So it's going to sound like this. Right, let's break that down. Kind of a standard rock groove going on, like I said, it's very similar to the verse groove at the final part. 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. We got the set of 3 on the kick drum this time. I've personally always struggled with sets of 3. When I did the drum cover of this, I was pretty fatigued by the time I got round to this song and round to the actual take I used. My sets of 3 were really starting to suffer. It is just practice, trying to get 3 quick. In order to practice these, I would recommend just doing lots of sets of 3, so you've got a groove that goes and just work up the stamina of your foot. At this point, some people will be able to use full strokes to do this, but you can also use what's known as like an ankle floating technique, where you're just catching the beater and you're using your ankle joint rather than a full leg. Okay, right, back to the groove. So we got 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And we've got doubles and a crash on the snare drum on beat 4, which is going to bring us into our crash section as a call and response idea between each line. So the second part is basically the same, couple of little changes on the kick drum. So we got from bar 65, 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4. It's going to take us straight back to the bell for the third line at bar 69. 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So on that last bar of the third line, we've snuck in another set of 3 kick drums. Brings us back into that crash section as the response. 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4. And that's the end of chorus 1. Verse 2. Verse 2 happens at 144. We've got we're returning to the idea of the snares on the quarter notes for just 2 bars, but this time we're going to play them as flams. With that fill that happens a couple of times in verse 1. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4. With your flams, as I discussed on nearly all of the videos, learn your flams with a quiet note to lead and the loud note playing on the beat. So you're going just before with this one as quiet. And what would usually be your dominant hand as the loud note. When I play these ones live, I like to alternate them. I think it kind of looks cool. Practice them slowly, build them up. It's a really important rudiment, the flam. Bar 79, we're going to kick into the same groove we experienced on the first verse, sorry. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2. Following that riff of the guitar. Da, 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 da. Going to do that for 2 lines, and then at the end we've got a slightly shorter version of the 16th note fill but rather than having the leading 2 notes on the kick drum, we're just going to start it with the snare, 3 and a 4. So going from bar 85, we're going to have 1 and 2, 3. Aha, no we're not. We're going to have 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and a 4. Again, the work that you do to get those doubles on the go will pay off here as well. We're going to have 2 more lines of our standard groove from the first verse. This one right here, until we get to the final bar where we're putting our fill back in from the previous verse. 3 and 4, slam, kick, snare and crash. So bar 93, 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4. This is going to bring us into bridge number 2. Very slight variation on this. We're going to have 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. Rather than 4 and 1, 2 from bridge 1, we've got 4 and 1 and 2. Slight variation. I like it. It's going to go like this. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and a 4 yander. I'm hearing a second kick under beat 4 this time, rather than just the 3 and a 4 yander from the first bridge. We've got 3 and a 4 yander. Adds a little bit of extra. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and a 4 yander. Chorus number 2 at 2 minutes 13 seconds of the track. We're coming into our second chorus. Couple of extra fills in this one, although basically the same ideas. So we've got back onto our bell, 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Into the crash section as before. 3, 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2. At the end of the second line, we've got a fill that's going to go 3 and a 4 and a 1. At speed, if I go from bar 103, got a second crash as an option here. I think it looks better. Boom, bam, bam, boom, bam, bam, boom. This is just a case of developing your single strokes while moving the right hand around the cymbals. So slowly again from bar 103, we're going to have 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and a 4 and a 1. This time we're going to start the third line off with a crash rather than going straight to the bell. 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. We're sneaking in that set of 3 kick drums, and I've actually missed that on the first line, which wasn't there in the first chorus, I don't think. Oh no, it totally was. It's exactly the same as chorus 2. So we've got those 3 sets of 3 kicks on the first 2 bars of the call of the response. 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Second part, we're adding those 3 in again onto the crash cymbal. Exactly the same. This time at beat 3, we've got a fast 16th note fill. 1 and a 2 and a. Now this is basically the same as the one above, but we're not going to be moving from cymbal to cymbal this time. We're going to hit the 3, and then rather than going bap, bap, 4 as above, we're going to go 3 and a 4. So same motion, we're just putting the right hand on the snare on top of the kick rather than the crash cymbal. 3 and a 4. You'll see a little bracketing note on the E of 4. This is more of a flow thing. It's not so much a kind of intentional ghost note. When you train lots of 16th notes with accents, you tend to have this idea going through, and then you kind of pop out the 16th that you want. In this case, you want and a 4 and a. So it kind of does that. Bap, 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 bap. So at speed, bar 111 is going to sound like this. That's going to bring us into bar 113, and we're going to be smashing out lots of kick drums underneath crash cymbals, just to build us back into that mid-late. with a choke on beat 4. So coming out of bar 109. You only got one crash cymbal, only use one crash cymbal obviously, but I tend to mark the beginnings of sections and things like that with an additional crash, just to add an extra dynamic to it. That's going to bring us nicely into the mid-late. 2 minutes 37 we're going to hit this. We've got 4 bars of rest, of silence, while the guitarist kicks off another riff. And then we're going to have what is a developing beat. We're gradually going to add parts to this beat. I really like this kind of style of drumming where we just add, we kind of have a full beat in mind and we're just going to break it into its individual sections and gradually add new parts. So we're going to start off at bar 119 and we've got 2 and 4 on the kick drum. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Added to this at bar 127, we've got 8th notes on our right hand, excuse me, or the dominant hand on the floor tom. And when that gets introduced, we're going to put quarter notes on the kick drum. So we're going from 1, 2, 3, 4 to 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And once we've got this idea down, we're going to add an open hi-hat on the 2 and 4, usually where we'd put a snare drum, but we're in a half-time feel here, so it's actually on the offbeats, but they're offbeat quarter notes rather than offbeat 8th notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. Once we've got that, at bar 135, we're going to add snare on the back beat on beat 3, like I said, in that half-time feel. And we're going to use it with the left hand coming across from the open hi-hat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So when we're building this up, I'm going to shorten the phrases to demonstrate this, but we're going to go from the 2 and 4 on the kick to that full beat there. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Bar 139. Bar 139, we're going to crash into a full beat again. That one with a kick. So we got a full drum beat, kicks on the kind of 8th notes divided by the snare. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... we're using a molar technique for the hi-hat, so the important notes that are coming through on this are the quarters, like that. Taylor Hawkins uses this quite a lot, where he's whipping down on the first note and coming up for a quieter ghost note on the second. It's not, excuse me, it's not an intentional ghost note. It's just part of that molar system. He actually has a tendency to only play 3 of these as well, so he kind of goes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, where he's coming up for the snare. You can do this if you like. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but it kind of lessens the work involved basically. But if not, molar system will do fine. Going to do that for 4 bars, and on the 4th bar we're going to have a very short fill of 16th notes at the end of 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and a 1, which brings us back into this intro idea coming back round before the final chorus. So at bar 143 we're going to end on that snare and kick, which is at 3 minutes 18. We're going to have that bar and another 7 bars of rest while we have that lovely guitar part coming back in. And then we're coming back in for our final chorus. Chorus number 3. So, coming back into the final chorus, and we've got a slightly different idea on the kick drum now. It's a much more straighter feel in terms of from bars 1 to 2, or in this case 151 to 152, rather than having the and 1 and or 4 and 1 and, where we're jumping around beat 1 with the kick drum. He's going to play just a double straight through it. So we got 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. It's a much straight ahead, more of a straight ahead feeling than kind of leaping around the downbeat. So before we had 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. Now we've got 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. We're going to continue that idea for the second half of that top line. Back into the crashes as per usual. 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4. First fill, just a flam on beat 4, kind of pauses everything very briefly before slamming in. So his first two lines are going to go like this. Next two lines, back onto the ride cymbal with a crash. Same idea again. Back onto the crash cymbal at bar 163. Same idea, but we got a beast of a fill here, 16th notes around the kit. So from bar 165, 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Single strokes around at blistering speed. This fill sounds awesome. It's going to take a little while if you're not used to playing this quickly around the kit. As always, start it off slowly and build it up. So to break that bar down, at bar 166, we're going to go 1 and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. If you don't have two floor toms, if you have a second rack up here, use these around like this. So you'd go 1 and a 2E and a 3E and a rack, floor. Okay. I personally prefer two floors. So I got my ride cymbal right there, which I use all the time. And I would have thought a lot of people, well, generally speaking, when you have a rack tom up there, certainly at the beginning stages, you tend to just use it to go round this way, from this one to this one. So just ditch it, stick a ride cymbal on it. That's completely your choice. Right, so 1 and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1 and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. At speed, that line's going to be coming into the third part of the chorus, or rather the third set of two lines, at bar 167. We get to bar 171 to 173, and we got a slightly different rhythm coming on. It's more syncopated, i.e. it doesn't always land on the beat. So going from bar 173, 1 and 2, 3 and 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. This one may take a little bit of getting used to. So a little bit slower again. 1 and 2, 3 and 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. So sticking on this, I would recommend from the of 4, left, right, right, left, right, right, left, right, right, left. So we all got left, right with an additional crash on the right, with a right, left at the end. This basically means that when you're thinking of it as a 16th note pattern, the right hand stays on the ones and the ands, or rather the quarter notes 1, 2, 3, 4, and the ands of each of those. The left hand stays on the e's and the uhs. 1 and 2, 3 and 4, a 1 and E and 3 and a 4 and at speed. Brings into bar 175, the fourth part of the chorus. And we're basically going to play a groove all the way through this as we are going into transition into the outro. So at bar 181, simple as that to finish it off. And then we're coming onto the ride cymbal. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and a. Kind of a combination of the ends of the choruses and the bridge where he's coming back onto the ride. and ending with that 16th note single stroke fill at the end. Kicks under the 3 and the 4, 3-ander, 4-ander, which is going to bring us on to our outro. So at 4 minutes 15, we've got a 2-line outro and a completely different idea for the outro that we haven't heard in the song yet. We've got quarter notes on the hi-hat, which is going to come in a push on the ander 4 on the crash cymbal. It's going to sound a little bit like this. So breaking that down a bit, we've got doubles kicking between the kick and the snare with a 4 and at the end. Bang. So we're going to have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 is silent, 1 and 2. We're going to pick that hi-hat back up on beat 2 and continue the idea of the double stroke between the snare and the kick. So those first 2 bars, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Repeat, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. At bar 189 on the second line, we're going to hit crash and a snare. Yep, crash and a snare. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So single strokes between your hands and your foot. Stopping on beat 4, and then we've got one more round of the basic idea for the entire song. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and, which is lined up with the guitar riff. So that last section, sorry, the last line of the entire song, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. One thing to note is when you hit that first one of those, you're going to close your hi-hat up from the previous bar. So from bar 190, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, close. That's the end of the Pretender. I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial. Hope it's been useful. If you've got any questions or comments, drop them below and I'll do my best to answer them. Any requests for any tutorials, go for that as well. And until next time, have a good one. Cheers.